I was born into a world you may not understand. Hello, and welcome to Exploding Helicopters, the podcast that sinks its oversized canines into films where helicopters explode. Now, it's been 20 years since Milla Jovovich crashed into the lives of movie fans when she landed violently on the roof of Bruce Willis's taxi in The Fifth Element. Since then, the former supermodel has carved out a career as one of the leading ladies of the action genre, most notably in the 6-film-strong Resident Evil series. But while she's perhaps best known for battling zombies, our Milla has also faced off against that other great enemy of classic horror, vampires. So on this show, we're looking at the 2006 film Ultraviolet. As usual, I've got someone alongside me to help review the film. He sucks the life out of everyone he meets, and I'd love to drive a stake through his heart. With me once again is my good friend Dara. How you doing, buddy?
Hello world, how are we?
Well, I'm pretty good. I don't know what sort of state I am going to find you in, though, today, because I fear what your reaction to watching this film may be. But for those of you who are regular listeners, and I think there may be one or two of you, this is a very special episode because it's the much-promised Milla Jovovich special. And, you know, I have to thank Dara. You're here, and you're helping me make my dreams come true, because Milla Jovovich is an actor who holds a very special place in my heart, but
I really don't. Well, I've got a rough idea why you might like her, but in terms of this film, I honestly feel like you're punishing me for something, Will. I've come, it's out the goodness of my heart. I take up my time, watch these films, write up notes, try and be as professional as possible, with the hope, sort of outside chance that Will's put me in the direction of a film I've not seen before, which I might quite like, and it might have, some excitement. And then you do this to me. How long have we known each other, Will? Why have you done this to me?
Well, I mean, it's been it's possibly about 30 years we've known each other, Dara. Now, a frightening
30 years,
a frightening length of time. But
I would have been out of if I'd killed like a battalion of people. I would have been out by now and not have to suffer this rubbish.
Look, I'm not going to take that much abuse from you, because I know what a diva you are when it comes to the films that you will and won't watch on this podcast. And I have been treating you very nicely of late. I've given you some films that you've genuinely enjoyed. So you're well overdue something that you can bitch and gripe about.
Fair enough. And this was your birthday present, Will, so let's not forget that.
Exactly.
All
you can't begrudge me that.
I'll let you off.
Now, obviously, we're talking about an actress that I carry somewhat of a torch for, but that made me wonder, Dara, though, are there any actresses out there that you hold a bit of a candle for?
So that's a good question, Will. I like these early questions, which I'm unprepared for. So I always wondered about people who would go to the cinema because they fancied a female actress. I always found that a bit curious, a bit odd, because especially these days, you can get your fill, so to speak, inverted commas, judge of it what you will, on the internet of your favourite actress without having to go and see her in a film with, pretty much all of her clothes on. It's unnecessary. I personally don't understand it. There are, of course, as a red-blooded heterosexual, there are women that I like in the cinematic universe. I used to quite like, I like the ones, I've had this discussion with my girlfriend a few times. I kind of like the actresses who are not sort of model types. I like them who are a bit curious looking facially. I don't know if would you consider Uma Thurman to be a model type? I quite like her.
Well, she's very striking looking. I would agree. She's got a slightly unconventional look about her. But
that's what I like. That's what I like. Okay. That's what floats my boat. Those kind of women.
So you would possibly drag yourself out of your decrepit hovel to go and see an Uma Thurman movie?
Not particularly, no. I wouldn't. And that's my point. I like her and she's pretty, but would I go to see a film? I'd rather the film was good, Will. Can you understand that? I'd rather the film was good.
That's not a concept I'm familiar with, Dara.
Yeah, all right, okay.
Okay, I think it's time to get stuck into Ultraviolet. But before we do that, let's listen to Trailer Man deliver a classically structured voiceover.
They made her a weapon.
Killing is what I do. It's what I'm good at.
They made her a target.
The humans want me.
You jeopardize everything by coming here.
I don't have any place left to go, Garth. Besides, you have all my guns.
And in the final days of mankind's greatest war,
This is pure suicide. No one but you could have put this off.
she will decide their fate.
Ultraviolet takes place in a dystopian future in the years following a global epidemic that causes people to have vampire-like symptoms, superhuman physical abilities, and elongated canines. The government has been taken over by a militant medical group called the Arch Ministry, who round up infected citizens and exterminate them in an effort to contain the virus. Our hero is a woman called Violet, who is a member of an underground resistance fighting to protect the vampires, or hemophages as they're known here. Working with the resistance, Violet steals a weapon that's supposed to kill off all the hemophages. However, the weapon turns out to be a young boy. The resistance want to kill the child to end the threat he poses to the hemophages, but believing that the child could hold the key to finding a cure for the disease, Violet goes on the run with the Sprog. There's then a whole bunch of complicated plot twists about the kid, the virus, and the nature of the government, which for the sake of brevity I'm not going to go into. Ultraviolet was written and directed by Kurt Wimmer, who is perhaps best known as a writer, having scripted Sphere, The Recruit, and the remakes of Point Break and Total Recall. He also wrote and directed Equilibrium, a sci-fi film which has got a bit of a cult following. Ultraviolet stars Milla Jovovich as Violet. It also has William Fichtner in it as well, but no one else you've really heard of. Ultraviolet has a rating of sadly just 4.4 on IMDb and a rating of a very miserly rating on Rotten Tomatoes of 9%.
That's high. That's high.
It's fair to say that the critics didn't like this film. Woefully nonsensical from start to finish, and unengaging, uninspired, and unwatchable are just two of the kinder reviews. But never mind what other people thought. Dara, what do you think of Ultraviolet?
Let me add to that. A criminal waste of time, Empire magazine, which is kind of how I felt when I watched the film. Inept in every regard. Rather than Ultraviolet, this is ultra rubbish. Probably the worst film I've ever reviewed for Exploding Helicopter. Absolutely horrendous, really. Pretty much from the start to finish. Actually, saying that, the very, very beginning I enjoyed, when the kind of comic book sequence that was leading up into the beginning of the film with the credits, I enjoyed that. I thought, oh, it's a bit like a Marvel type thing. They've done that. I quite enjoyed how that worked. And then when the film actually finished, completely finished, and then I started to read the reviews about this film on Rotten Tomatoes, and just the avalanche of hatred directed towards it was funnier than anything that happened in the film. It is like a completely humorless mishmash of ideas done badly, effects done so poorly, the sort of thing you'd expect to see from like a Super Nintendo or something. Horrendous pretty much in every regard. Acting awful, plot awful. I didn't care about the characters after about 10 minutes when you're just going from one stupid, unreasonable sequence to another. Absolutely awful. A terrible, terrible film.
Are you feeling better now? Now you've let that all out.
I've got more to come. Trust me.
Well, I am afraid to say I can't really disagree with you. I mean, this is a terrible film. It is awful for the reasons that you say. The plot is an absolute mess of a movie, and you get a very early idea of just what a mess it is in the fact that the first 2 or 3 minutes of this movie are a sort of unending voiceover from Milla Jovovich, where they just desperately try to sort of dump a whole load of information on you to try in a failed attempt to make the rest of the movie make sense. But sadly, despite all of that yapping, none of the plot really makes that much sense. And I mean,
what do you think? What do you think happened here? Was it another one of these cases where, in the edit, because I was reading something about this film, how apparently there's extended, if you're mental, you could buy the DVD of this film, and there's extended release, and there's lots of cutscenes, and lots of it explains motivations, because this is one of the things this film does not have. It literally, you don't care about any of these characters. There's no motivation. There's no kind of framework for why they are behaving in the way that they should. There's some veiled reference at the beginning that Jovovich's character was pregnant, loses a child, and that's why she's got a bond with this kid, and why she seemingly gives up everything to try and save him, even though she met him like 2 seconds ago. Why some of the characters sort of behave in really extreme ways. there's a bit more exposition, but they cut loads of those scenes out. It's the one good thing about this film, I'd say, it's short. It's under an hour and a half. Thank the Lord. But I think it might have benefited slightly if some of these kind of, you know, the kind of
you wanted more of Ultraviolet. You wanted more of it.
I don't know. Well, when I don't know how a film. Apparently, the $30 million was spent on this film. How a film with that much money and presumably intelligent people, writers and directors and actors and all sorts, how this film gets made and it goes into the cinema, it's so appalling. Without someone saying this is absolute bull. We've got to do a rewrite. We've got to do something else. We've got to change the styling of it. It's so bad. How does this film get out into the cinema?
I don't know if adding in some of the because I think they cut about 15-20 minutes out of this movie. I don't know if adding those 15-20 minutes back in would actually be enough, because there are so many missing questions. There's so many questions still left in this film that I just don't think that, you know, 15 or 20 minutes would be enough in order to make the, you know, what we see on screen here make sense. You know, I almost think a film twice the length would probably still be struggling to convey all of the sort of mishmash of ideas that are at work here. But
do you know why so presumably the people who caught the virus suddenly they turned into vampires. That was what I got.
Yeah.
So why? What sort of virus turns you into a vampire? And why does every vampire have to be an expert in martial arts? Does it make you an expert? Does it teach you martial arts as well?
The idea was that this virus was created because, and this is in the voiceover at the beginning, that they were trying to, it was like a kind of secret government weapons program. They were trying to create like genetic super soldiers type thing. So that's why you then have the sort of superhuman abilities, although it doesn't really explain why they grow long canines and start becoming like vampires. And that's an element of the film which is completely undeveloped, because we don't see these characters behaving in ways which are typical of vampires, i.e. problems with sunlight or even desiring blood. It's all very peculiar. I don't know if those were sequences that were left on the cutting room floor, but it's emblematic of like one of this film's biggest problems, which is the world in which it's depicting is barely fleshed out. And so you have this very sort of complicated war between humans and these sort of hemophages taking place in a future world where you've got this sort of bizarre religious medical government department essentially running the whole country, but you don't really understand what is going on within the wider society. And I think the first third of this movie, I probably enjoyed it for a bit longer than you did. I think the first third of this movie is actually probably okay, because there's quite a lot of forward motion in the plot. There's quite a lot of essentially it's one sort of long sort of variety of chase sequences. Yes, you might not know what on earth is going on, but at least, you know, you're seeing sequences which are like sequences you've seen in other films before. So
yeah, exactly. That's all it's always got going for it. Even the fight sequences, they're sort of unrealistic. I know you get in sort of Chinese martial arts and Japanese martial arts wire work and stuff like that, where people do crazy things, but it's kind of set in a context of reality where, you know, you could maybe buy it, but it's so implausible, and I just didn't believe. I think, you know, the important thing of a film to try and get you involved is you've got to kind of have a belief in the characters and what they're doing. And as you said, there's no framework, there's no sort of explanation. People are kind of doing things, you don't really understand their motivations. And these kind of like, they're almost just like set pieces, fight sequences where she just kills everybody and nothing can touch her, and you don't really understand why and what. It's meant for like adolescents, I imagine, because it's you know, it's a lot of comic book robot-y fighting with Milla's ass kind of liberally spread around, so you could see that she knows what she's there for. I would imagine it would appeal to like an 11-year-old child, but I think that even for an 11-year-old child, they would get bored of this film.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about the action in this movie, because I think you've already alluded to it. This is meant to be a sort of an action movie, but the action in it is really quite it's really anticlimactic, because you'll see sort of Milla Jovovich will be in a scene, she'll be surrounded by sort of dozen or 15 kind of heavily armed men, and then suddenly, with one swoosh of a sword or sort of one burst of quick gunfire, she will suddenly have dispatched all of those people. So you just think, oh, I thought that was going to be a big fight scene, and just suddenly everyone's dead.
It's really odd. I mean, the whole kind of special effects and design, is this weird sheen that's over everything, which kind of, it's almost like a computer game where they've tried to make it look, even though it's not a computer game, they've tried to, there's like a filter that they put on to that kind of makes her look less human. It just looks really odd. It doesn't look, it adds to the kind of disassociation you feel, because you just feel that this is just not real. I don't really care about any of this. And some of the effects, it's weird, because they obviously must have spent a bit of money on the effects, but when you get to sort of explosion, there's the scene, well, we'll talk about the exploding helicopter, but there's a scene when she's riding a bike, and there's bits where she's turning a corner. It's almost like it's juddering. You see it actually really visibly low CGI, awful. Like, I don't understand. I think $30 million isn't enough to make. It
should buy you better CGI than this.
But is it? I don't think it's enough in these. Do you think I think it must cost more to make a film of this nature, because why would you make such a poor show of the CGI? Why would you do it if you've got that much money to spend? Surely you'd see that. Anyone could see that and say, this is actually really kind of sixth form. It's really poor. Should we not redo that scene or pay someone, a better design company?
Well, I guess they just, had spent the money and there's no more money to spend, so they got to roll with it. But yeah, I mean, it is hard to sort of remember what the state of CGI was, back 12 years ago. But I'm pretty certain it was of a better quality than what we see here. I think perhaps the issue is they perhaps rely on CGI too much. There's clearly whole sequences in this film which are just complete green screen, and I think in other films they've got sets which they then augment it with CGI, and perhaps a combination like that would have worked better. Perhaps they wouldn't have been able to do some of the things that they do in this movie in terms of the cityscapes, without using wholly CGI, but
they look bad. They look really bad.
It does look awful. I agree with you. This whole film has this really weird burnt out effect. It's like someone's messed around with the contrast on like your television. There's just a very strange quality to the colours. It's like there's like too much brightness in the mix, and it becomes slightly it's very distracting.
Very off-putting.
As you watch this film.
Yeah, it was whoever the sort of production design person was, I don't think they'd be working again. There's no person would look them up to say, I'd like my film to look like this. It just looks really odd and unrealistic. A lot of futuristic, like things like a Blade Runner set in the future, like it's kind of almost prides itself. If you compare something like Blade Runner, I can imagine a lot of money was spent on Blade Runner to get those effects looking as good as they did. But you just compare that to this, and it honestly, it's like the work of a sixth former or someone in a first year at university. That's the kind of, it's really someone with very limited budget or limited skills or limited technology. I mean, when was this film actually made?
Well, probably produced in, 2005, something like that.
So it's not ancient. It's reasonably, if you think of other, huge films that have come out, even before that
you had in 99, I think it was, you had both The Matrix and the first and the Phantom Menace came out, which that obviously used an awful lot of CGI, and The Matrix used a lot of CGI. Obviously, it's both of those films to much better effect than this film is using. They obviously had more money and probably better talented people working on it.
Yeah, I don't know. It must be a combination of money. I mean, this is a lesson for anyone. If you want to do one of these films, you need money, and also you need the people to make your vision work. But with that kind of, I suppose, a meager budget. I mean, they didn't spend much money on the actors because, as you said before, you don't recognise anyone apart from our friend William how do you pronounce it? Fincher?
I'm going with Fichtner.
Fichtner, well, I'd say Fichtner. He's kind of a character actor. He's probably the only one in the whole film who could actually act. His little scenes are like an oasis of acting class amongst the kind of nonsense and just, oh God, I'm giving up. I'm losing the plot. Will.
Okay, well, I tell you what, I need you to rally one more time because I'm going to mount a slight defense of Ultraviolet because I am not going to make any defense of the way in which this film executes the ideas that it has, but I do think there is evidence of lots of ideas at work in this film. So there are
I'm interested to hear, Will. Come on, let's go.
So you have this idea of, for instance, the costumes of the characters. There's clearly an imagination at work. Everybody is dressed in a very elaborate way. You have these almost maybe stormtroopery type guards who have these.
They're just copied ideas from someone else. There's no original ideas in this film at all.
I disagree with that. I mean, they have these little devices, these kind of like video scrolls, which they kind of unveil to display information. There's these kind of strange. There's also this concept within the film of like dimension compressing, so that sort of blades can sort of disappear into sort of perhaps the size, something the size of a knife. There are these weird, I guess it's the idea of the society that they live in where people are afraid of infection, so people have these strange things like plugging up their nostrils.
That's not people being afraid of infection. That's not a new idea. The phone,
but having their noses plugged up is. Where have you seen that before?
The only guy who had his nose plugged up was the main evil guy. Not everyone had that. A lot of people had proper masks on. He was the only person who had one of those things.
Well, I think, as I say, I think if you look at the costumes, you look at the set design, you look at some of the gadgets that people have in this particular world, I think there are a lot of ideas. There are a lot of ideas at work in this movie. I'm making no defense of the execution of them. They are often hapless, pointless, or poorly done. But I don't think you can accuse this film of having not attempted to be highly creative.
Nice try, Will, but you're not going to get a date with Milla. You've got a restraining order on you. You're not allowed to go within 500 yards of her. The judge has told you that. No amount of trying to big up this film is going to change. She's moved on, I'm afraid.
Well, let's talk about Milla Jovovich, my favourite subject. Obviously, I am a big fan. Did you see anything in this movie that could possibly convert you to being of the same opinion?
Her midriff. I think perhaps she has it in her contract, or perhaps in this film, that she has to show her extremely toned and alive midriff at all times. Any coverage of that midriff will result in financial penalties to the production company and to the producers. I'll be honest with you, I don't want to be too harsh on her, because I read her bio and she is actually someone who's tried a few things in her career. We'll talk a bit about, apparently, she's got a bit of a music career going on. She's got a fashion line. She's speaks out on various different issues. She's obviously an intelligent person. This film is not going to highlight her best qualities. I mean, I'm thinking even Meryl Streep would have struggled with this toilet material that she had to deal with. So I wasn't that excited about her performance. She's not really. I didn't believe that she was a kick-ass person who could kill everyone. I didn't really believe it. She's, quite fit that can do, because she can duck and dive a little bit. Didn't believe 1 second that she could, this is, assassin that she was portrayed in this film. She's not really very charismatic in this film. I don't think she's got much opportunity to be charismatic. She's there because she's good looking, very good looking, and she's very fit. And that's as best I can say for her, really, Will.
Okay, well, I think you're perhaps overlooking some of her qualities as a leading lady. I think she's got something. I would compare her almost to being a sort of a female Clint Eastwood, in the sense that she's got the same sort of quietly spoken sort of steeliness about her character. Doesn't necessarily always display very much emotionally on her face, but I think she definitely has a presence which she brings to these movies, and she is not, sadly, a sort of a trained martial artist or anything like that. So when she's doing the kind of to believe her as an action lead, you need the choreography in the movie to be good. Sadly, the choreography here is really bad. So it's very clear that people are moving in different directions because they're anticipating blows coming in those directions. So it's almost like watching a choreographed dance rather than watching a fight sequence. But,
I think there was some decisions made about which bits to cut, which weren't obviously her decision, or even the director's decision, apparently, to reduce another situation here where I think the studio, to get bums on seats, reduced the rating of the film from what it might have been to I think it was like a PG or a 12 or something. I don't know what that translates to in the US. But, it's a film that you could take a teenager would be able to get into, because there's no blood. There's about 1 billion people get killed in this film. Guns and bullets and knives and swords, but no kind of, you never see a wound or anything. It's kind of hamstrung itself in many ways in order for this to sort of, to try and to appeal to as many people as possible.
I mean, I have to say, I also do have a soft spot for Milla as well, on the basis that she, having said that, I think she reminds me a bit of Clint Eastwood. I also think that she reminds me of Rutger Hauer, a sort of female Rutger Hauer, only in the sense that, like Rutger Hauer, Milla Jovovich has appeared in one good sci-fi film, The Fifth Element. Rutger Hauer obviously starred in Blade Runner, and he starred in that film, and he was able to kind of parlay that sort of success in Blade Runner into a very lengthy career in straight-to-video sci-fi movies. And Milla Jovovich seems to have done pretty much the same thing. So having established herself in this sort of sci-fi niche, she's then sort of ploughed away in that furrow pretty much exclusively since then. So I kind of think, I think she is sort of the female Rutger Hauer.
Didn't Rutger Hauer, he was in The Hitcher as well, though, wasn't he?
He was, yes.
He was good in The Hitcher. So, I haven't seen the Resident Evil.
That's 2 good films.
Okay, I'm struggling to think of a third film. I probably will come back to you on that one. So I haven't seen the Resident Evil series, but you are a fan, I believe.
I am a big fan of those movies. I think they are a bit of a mixed bag. I think some are better than others. The weird thing about the Resident Evil movies is that Milla Jovovich made them with the main honcho behind the Resident Evil films is a guy called Paul W.S. Anderson, who is now Milla Jovovich's husband.
Yeah.
And so whilst he's written all of the films and directed 3 or 4 of them, but the best films tend to be the ones that he didn't direct. So it's a bit of a sort of I don't know if that's something she's noticed as well or not. I do sometimes wonder as to whether that is ever discussed in their marriage, that the kind of the best films that they make together tend to be
with other people.
That tends to be with other people. But
she was married to Luc Besson as well, who directed Fifth Element, and then they had a parting of the ways.
Well, she has actually been married 3 times. So she married Paul W.S. Anderson after working with him on Resident Evil. She also married Luc Besson after working with him on The Fifth Element. And her first marriage was to a guy, I think his name's Sean Andrews, who she worked with on Dazed and Confused. So basically, the dream, Dara, the dream is I need to engineer an opportunity to work with Milla Jovovich, because then it's on, Dara.
So that Karate Kid script we've got in the pipeline, it's brewing. We need to get her as a female love interest. We need to get you in, either producer, stroke director, and you can call the shots on the casting. Yeah, I have to have Milla for her acting chops. She really is the
only person who
generation.
Can bring my vision to life.
Yeah, with Mr. Miyagi out of the grave.
Yeah,
that's the way to do it. Will, I think we've got a plan for you.
Well, you did mention it earlier that Milla is a lady who has many strings to her bow, and I tipped you off about her music career, and even after you watched Ultraviolet and you were being very grumpy, I managed to persuade you to sample some of her music. So I wondered what you made of the different songs that you checked out.
What a treat this was. This is, I like to think I'm a man of worldly taste. I hear a lot of music in my time. I like all sorts of genres. So interesting. I would probably put her songs in the sort of folky-ish territory. She likes a guitar. She likes a stool. So I've seen, so that, I was treated, I looked at, there was one that she did a cover of Proud Mary, which halfway through she's got an interesting take on singing, I have to say. She starts off quite traditionally, but then does like to kind of go into sort of bizarre kind of screaming yodel, tuneless kind of wailing, odd, and both the songs that I listened to, halfway through I was like, what is going on with this sort of warbler? It's weird.
I think she's actually got quite a good voice. It's definitely an interesting voice. It's just very frequently she doesn't seem to use it in any way normally associated with singing a melody.
Singing. Yeah, it's weird. It's interesting. It's a brave take on singing. I don't think I'll be going and getting her back catalogue anytime soon. But I have to say, there's been a lot of dissing and a lot of negativity. I don't like to be completely negative. I hold my hands up to anyone who wants to try different things. She's someone who doesn't think she's just an actress. She wants to do loads of different things. So, I completely understand she wants to broaden her horizons, and I applaud her for that. I won't be buying anything that she's ever does. That's my only stipulation.
Okay, we are going to take a quick break, and once we do that, you're going to hear about a much superior podcast to the one you're currently listening to. But when we come back, we're going to be talking about a very special exploding helicopter.
He brings the popcorn. She brings the roses. Subject Cinema, a tasty new film topic each week with a side order of film reviews.
Yum.
T.C. Kirkham.
But I'm Jim.
Kim Brown.
What?
Over 500,000 listeners, and you could be the next one. SubjectCinema.com. Real movies for real people.
We're back, and we're talking about exploding helicopters. So after stealing the superweapon from the Arch Ministry, Milla makes her escape from the building on a motorcycle pursued by a heavily armed attack helicopter. In a reality-bending sequence, Jovovich rides up the side of a building. Arriving on the roof of the skyscraper, Milla rides her iron horse straight at the copter, which is hovering nearby. Jovovich roars off the top of the building through the open sides of the helicopter. As she passes through, Milla shoots the pilot and gunner dead before crashing through into another building. For a then indeterminate reason, the helicopter explodes. Dara, what did you make of the chopper fireball action?
Well, it comes reasonably early in the film, and I have to say, once I watched the sequence, I actually generally lolled. I laughed out loud how ridiculous the whole thing, because it's not really explained how she's got these powers to sort of change gravity, and it's completely ridiculous. There's no point to it in the film. I don't mind that. If it was just that would still be okay, because we love exploding helicopter and we like to see it done, in interesting ways. But the effects are so shoddy. In this particular sequence is probably the shoddiest part of the whole film. As I was saying before, there's bits where she turns corners on the bike where it generally looks like something from the 70s, like a Tron. Before Tron was made, even, where kind of the bike skids around a corner in juddery fashion, and the explosions are really bad. You can see it's all blue, it's all green screen, so it's so obvious. The CGI is so appalling. It's something out of a cheap computer game I would have played as a kid. It looks that bad, genuinely that bad. I'm not exaggerating. Well, plaudits should be given at least for trying to have something interesting, even though it's a bit of a cliche, exploding helicopter. And it's quite a big set piece. It's so badly done, and it's laughable. I didn't enjoy it as much as I could have done.
Oh, you've got no heart, Dara. You're dead inside. I mean, I'm not going to defend the execution again of the special effects here, but I applaud this film for giving us this outrageous exploding helicopter sequence. I mean, she cycles through an actual airborne helicopter. I don't need to have every element of the physics of the scene explained to me in terms of the gravity. I don't need to know why that helicopter explodes. I just want it to explode. It looks good. That's as much as I need.
It doesn't look good. That's number one. And number two, it's so unbelievable that you don't care. It's because it's so CGI'd and so fake that she could be riding through the stomach of an elephant. It's so pointless and so badly done that it's not happened. So it doesn't impress me. What impresses me is something that looks realistic. You think, well, how do they do that? Or was that CGI? Was it not? How do they get that shot? It's CGI, and you've got no interest in whether it works or doesn't work because it's completely unrealistic. So it removes all enjoyment for me.
Well, I'm going to give this film a lot of credit for the method that it chooses to destroy this film, but I have to say it isn't actually a wholly original method of blowing up a helicopter, because there is a sequence in a film, a straight-to-video film from the 80s called Final Score. Now, this starred Chris Mitchum, the son of Robert Mitchum, and at the end of that movie, Chris Mitchum rides on a motorcycle off the top of a building, and he also goes through a hovering helicopter so that he can drop a grenade into the fuselage of the chopper before the whole thing sort of blows up. Now, this is obviously done in the 80s, so no CGI whatsoever. So it's all done practically. So
have you seen that, Will? Have you seen that sequence? What does that look like?
It looks good. I have to say, I really enjoyed it. I mean, it's not. This is a straight-to-video movie from the 80s. I mean, it's a really low-budget straight-to-video movie. So they are not. It's not filmed in. As you would. It's not filmed in the way it would if this was a kind of a big budget. 80s Hollywood action movie. But it is a still very good sequence, and you have to admire how they put it all together.
Exactly.
On a limited budget with practical effects.
And that's my point. So I haven't seen that clip, but I bet you I'd enjoy that more than this.
Well, Dara, I can make that wish come true. We can always review it for our next movie.
What have I done?
Okay, well, I think we're going to wrap things up there. So that's our discussion of Ultraviolet done and dusted. Dara, thanks for joining me once again.
That's all right. I'm going to have a very stiff drink and let my blood pressure settle now.
Okay. Well, just a few things from me. Don't forget to check out our website, explodinghelicopter.com. Leave us a review on iTunes, give us a retweet, shout out on Facebook, help spread the word about what we're doing. It really does help. We'll be back soon, but until then, keep watching the skies for those exploding helicopters.
This podcast is a proud member of the Lamb Podcasting Network. Find the network at largeassmovieblogs.com.
She has saved the world from total annihilation. She's fought off hordes of flesh-eating creatures, and now she's taking on a ruthless government. In the new sci-fi film Ultraviolet, I don't think I need to say any more, ladies and gentlemen. Milla Jovovich is here. Milla, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Come here.
Thank you.
I was just vacuum packed, so I'm a little frazzled.
I kind of saw the end bit of that, and I was just like,
the part where I was completely out of air and dying?
Kind of, but you said it was fun. It looks good.
Your life flashed before your eyes, and I saw you, and I knew this interview was coming up, and I just had to get out of the bag because I got to say, you, my friend, are a geek icon. I mean, I don't know if you're aware of this, but between Fifth Element, Resident Evil, and Ultraviolet, you're on the same nerd pedestal as Darth Vader for most people. Yes. And is that a big deal? How does that feel to you?
It's awesome. I mean, I have to say I was a big fan of sci-fi and fantasy growing up, so I guess, you know, I was kind of a geek too.
Ah. Now, do you understand, like, what is it about geeks that they like a woman who could totally kick their ass? And why is that?
The geek spurt here.
Yeah, I'm curious, because, you know, you are appealing to them, and is it just because that, like, the thought that while you're beating them up, you'd actually physically be touching them, or is there something else going on here?
Well, I don't know. You don't feel excited by thinking about a beautiful woman kind of messing you around?
I like getting roughed up by the ladies every now and then. Don't get me wrong,
but exclusive to geeks. You know?
It's just, so it's guys in general. See, that's all I know. That's all I know. Browse my MySpace. It's nothing but geeks. I want to talk about the Ultraviolet because I'm driving home from work. Your midriff is not only perfectly sculpted, but it is everywhere. It's everywhere. I'm driving down Venice Boulevard, and every billboard and bus shelter, it's just, there you are with the sword, and it's added like another 7.5 minutes to my commute, so thank you for that. But that aside, you know, I'm sold. Just the poster with, again, the midriff and the sword, I'm sold.
Well, listen, it wasn't easy, let me tell you. I mean, I had like 7 months of training to get ready for this film.